How can a hybrid piano like the Novus 10S be my absolute favorite for live performance applications? Let's talk. Hey folks, EB here on behalf of Alamo Music, who have been helping people tell stories through song for almost a century long. Now, we recently shared a video with you on the Novus 10S, giving you a general overview of the instrument as well as some pros and cons if you're considering getting one to learn how to play the piano. You can find a link to that video in the description below. In this video, I'll be diving into the area that I love using the Novus for more than anything else, and that's live performance. Now, I'm going to be going into the specifics as to why I chose the Novus to be my instrument for live stream shows here on the Storytime stage. I'll also cover what other live performance applications I believe it's well suited for, and others where it wouldn't be maybe as strong. Now, that being said, this video will assume that you know the basics on the Novus in general. If you don't, please be sure to check out the video that I mentioned previously with its link in the description below. Okay, let's dive in. Now, before we get too deep into the conversation, here's first a bit of context for why the Novus 10S is my all-time favorite hybrid piano. Prior to 2020, my work as a performing artist ranged the gamut from intimate clubs to stadium performances. Now, by far the most consistent, well-paying work that I did was as a lounge pianist in high-end clubs and hotels, performing on their own acoustic baby grands. Now, when the pandemic hit and shut down live gigs entirely, I began re-examining the current methods for live performance via online platforms. One thing led to another, and I eventually decided to move all of my music business endeavors into online versions and make those the primary focus of my efforts going forward. Now, make no mistake, live streaming as an independent musician is still very much in its infancy. It's kind of like the Wild West out there, I'm not gonna lie, which is a good thing that I actually moved, to the actual Wild West. In order to set myself up to succeed, I knew I had to use an instrument that was extremely adaptable for whatever setup I required as I learned how to stream better and my channel grew. It also needed to be able to deliver great piano sound to my PC easily and conveniently. It had to sound great both to myself while performing as well as to any other musicians who would collaborate with me, either in person or via online methods. Lastly, as my stage isn't huge by any means, the piano needed to have a small footprint so I could fit as many other musicians on the stage as possible. Now, with these qualities in mind, I decided I should begin my search by looking at hybrid pianos. Hybrid pianos combine acoustic elements from a traditional piano with electric and electronic elements from instruments like synths, keyboards, and digital pianos. Now, they usually have a stereo audio output that you can send to devices like a PC or a mixing console. They also typically have a real acoustic piano action so that players can get that authentic piano feel as they play. I was already familiar with Yamaha's hybrid piano line. They're pretty good, but I was hoping that Kawai maybe had one of their own. I was delighted to discover in my research that they do. Through the assistance from the amazing team at Kansas City's Alamo Piano Gallery, I was able to test drive one, and in incredibly short order, I determined that the Novus 10S delivers on all of the categories that I was looking for better than anything else I'd ever seen, and frankly, exceeded even my pretty high expectations of what a hybrid piano could do at this stage of the game. In order to give you my perspective on why I use the Novus 10S for my Storytime live streams, I think the best way is to walk you through first how I actually use it, how it's connected to my system, what settings and what configurations I use on the actual Novus, and then give you a little taste of how it all comes together with some sample performances. Now, as you can see, I've placed the Novus 10S on the Storytime stage, where it does live fairly permanently. This 300-pound beauty is not something I care to move around any more than I have to. It's positioned so that I can look directly at my camera taking the master shot, and angled enough so that my second camera, which is usually placed over there off to the side, can catch me playing the keys in the cross shot of me and the rest of the band. Now, my studio is upstairs from the stage, so in order for me to run sound from the stage to my PC in the studio, I run a 75-foot snake with a stage box terminating right next to the Novus. The Novus does indeed have stereo outputs in the standard method of left and right, quarter-inch balanced jacks, and I run this output to the studio from those connectors into the stage box and then into my PC via my RME UFX3 audio interface. The PC then sends the feed from the Novus into my DAW, which is Ableton Live, and you can use pretty much any DAW though and any audio interface that has at least a stereo input and it'll work great. The Novus 10S has a wide array of presets for their sampled Kawai piano sounds, ranging from their smallest uprights all the way up to the Shigeru 9-foot concert grands, and everything in between. In addition, you can use the built-in Virtual Technician app to adjust the most essential parameters for each piano sound. What kind of parameters are we talking about? Well, we've got spatial rendering, or what they call ambience, touch curve, decay and release times, resonance depths, how open the top board is or how closed it is, half pedaling options, soft pedaling options, and even damper, fallback, and hammer noise. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how specific you can get if you want to. Personally, I like to have consistency in my piano sound, similar to what you'd hear at a live show with an actual acoustic piano. So I only use one piano sound during the show most of the time, and I have my favorite sound dialed in. It's called the SKEX rendering, and it's the souped up version of the SKEX Concert Grand with their best samples and algorithms running along with an actual rendering setting that allows you to dial in the sound for all kinds of performance settings. So for my streams, I set the rendering to jazz and I switch their ambience settings off, as I prefer to use the reverb and delay that's built into Ableton to apply more consistent room sound to all of the instruments and the voices that are here in the space as we perform. Now that I've given you the basics as to how I've configured the Novus 10S for my live streams, I think it's time that we give you a chance to really hear this thing in action. Here's a highlight from one of my recent Storytime shows. I hope you enjoy. Now, as you can probably tell, the Novus 10S has an incredibly small footprint, barely larger than the typical acoustic console upright piano. Because of that, I'm able to accommodate up to a full jazz piano trio, plus a featured performer like a singer or an instrumentalist for an entire quartet. Just because it's small, though, don't be fooled into thinking it may not have enough sound to hang. I have personally set mine to around 80% or so volume, which is what I think best represents the actual volume level of a real acoustic piano when I play it. That's right. It's already as loud as an acoustic piano, in my opinion, at 80% volume, leaving another 20-ish% or so of headroom to get even louder. This baby cranks. Just saying. Now, one quibble is good to mention here. In future versions, it would be great if Kawai changed the current volume knob, which has a smooth, sweepable setting, to one that is either clickable or at least has better marking for dialing in the exact setting and then being able to recall it later. Right now, it is both hard to see and hard to return to a previous setting. So once I set it the way I like, I do not even breathe in its general direction. Okay, now back to one of the two top reasons that I went for the Novus 10S. Here it is. Its live sound is ridiculous. It is so good. Mind-blowingly good. Okay, Kawai has partnered with the audio tech company Onkyo to drop in 7 different speakers, all of them working together to recreate this psychoacoustic experience of actually hearing an acoustic piano from the Novus 10S. it looks, it smells, it feels, if it walks like a duck, yada, yada, yada. This thing recreates acoustic piano feel and experience better than anything I've ever heard or seen, period. Let me tell you, it is awesome just how authentic the sound that comes out of this toy box is. I have played plenty of gigs with great sounding keyboards, don't get me wrong, okay? But the Storytime stage is essentially a living room converted into a performance space, right? And so I wanted to create the feel for my musician collaborators of hanging out in the parlor of my home, sitting next to a baby grand piano, and just making some music, man. So that everything feels incredibly relaxed and fun, and also keeps the stage volume levels, relatively low to assist with the tracking and mixing that goes on in a house and in a neighborhood. Without exception, everyone who performs with me on the Storytime stage in the stream comments on the amazing sound that the Novus creates. The first time we rehearse, it actually takes a minute or so for the folks to kind of settle in because their entire expectations of what an electronic instrument can do is completely scrapped. And it isn't long before they settle in and begin to kind of interact musically the way I was hoping, which is as if the Novus were an actual acoustic piano. But like most things having to do with music, it's usually better to talk less and do more. So here is a sample of my jazz trio, the EB3, from another recent stream. Watch how easy and enjoyable it is for these guys to interact with me and the music coming from this hybrid piano. Well, folks, there you have it. If you can find a hybrid piano better at fulfilling my needs for an instrument during live stream performance, feel free to let me know. But I challenge you to find one. Good luck. As for other applications, I can easily see the Novus NS working really, really well in any context where you need the musicians and perhaps a live audience to hear the instrument as well, but also have the flexibility of sound control and transmission that this piano offers. Live piano lounges, like the ones that I played in for years, could use this for sure, as well as dueling piano bars, churches who also don't want their poor musicians living entirely with in-ear monitors, which I see happening in churches across the board a lot these days, or who just simply want to simplify their sound guys' lives immensely, would also benefit from the Novus. Now, as a touring rig, it's easier to take along than a baby grand, but you'll need some muscle still, 300 pounds, and a little bit of space. However, plus, you won't need to tune it. You won't need microphones in spaces that might be difficult to get sound dialed in. And this all makes it an extremely viable instrument for a touring mid-tier and above artist or band. Now, one place that the Novus really wouldn't serve as a great option to replace an acoustic is in things like recital or performance halls, where a concert-sized actual piano is expected to have it in there to fully utilize the acoustics of the space. Now, the Novus is good, right? But even the Novus isn't that good to replace an actual Shigeru for those rooms. And sometimes you just simply need a keyboard. for the sheer portability. Don't expect to tour around with one of these guys in your local city. Get yourself a Nord Grand, which just happens to have Kawai action built into it. Food for thought. Now, have you ever played a Novus 10S yourself in a live performance application? If so, we would love to hear your thoughts on your experience as well in the comments below. Have any questions? Check in with the Alamo Music and the Alamo Piano Gallery experts via the links below as well, because those cats, man, they know their stuff, and they are happy to help. Watch for the final video in this series on the Novus 10S, featuring its use in studio applications, dropping soon. Until then, hey folks, I'm EB. Thanks for joining us, and you know what? Go make some music.